Welcome to this quick and practical guide on the bishop's opening, a simple yet tricky strategy that can be very uncomfortable for unprepared opponents. The opening starts with the moves pawn to e4 and pawn to e5, immediately leading to an active and dynamic position. On move 2, you play bishop to c4, which can surprise many players. Most opponents expect the classical knight to f3, but developing the bishop instead instantly puts pressure on a sensitive square in your opponent's position. At the same time, it prepares several tactical ideas and traps that can easily catch an opponent off guard. In many games, your opponent will naturally develop their kingside knight, attacking your pawn on a4. This is where you introduce a surprising idea: pawn to d4. This move challenges the center and creates immediate tension on the board. If your opponent is unfamiliar with this setup, it can be quite uncomfortable. They will usually respond by capturing either the pawn on d4 or the pawn on e4, while some players may simply develop another knight to strengthen their position. We will look at these possibilities one by one. Let's start with the most natural reaction. Your opponent captures the pawn on a4, continuing their initial plan. Since their knight was already attacking the pawn and you did not defend it, they decide to take it. However, after pawn captures on e5, your opponent's position becomes fragile, and even a small inaccuracy can lead to serious problems. For example, if they continue by developing their queenside knight, the main tactical concept of the bishop's opening appears, an aggressive bishop sacrifice that is a well-known theme in this opening. Once the king is forced to move, you quickly bring your queen into the attack, preparing to recover the sacrifice material on the following move. Not only do you win back the piece, but the enemy king also becomes exposed, losing the right to castle while you gain a strong attacking initiative. At this point, many opponents start thinking carefully about their next move. Some players may try to strike back immediately with pawn to d5, hoping to challenge your center and regain control of the position. In this moment, your opponent might feel confident, thinking they have strengthened their knight on a4 while also limiting your bishop's activity. But what they often miss is that after bishop takes d5, they are very close to making a serious mistake. Not only have they already dropped a pawn, but since your bishop is protected, they cannot capture it back. Meanwhile, their knight on a4 is now under attack. If they choose to retreat the knight, you suddenly have another powerful tactical idea. Bishop takes f7. This sacrifice has a different goal. It draws the king out so you can capture the queen on d8. Even if black stubbornly tries to maintain their defensive structure, the position still doesn't hold together. By playing bishop to g5, you keep the initiative and push black closer to a losing position. One of the most frequent mistakes in this situation is bishop to c5, where black attempts a double attack on your pawn on f2. Fortunately, this threat can be easily handled with a powerful triple counterattack that puts enormous pressure on your opponent. The biggest danger for black now is queen takes f7, which would deliver checkmate in a single move. At the same time, black's knight on e4 is under attack, and if it moves away, their bishop on c5 will simply be captured. Black might attempt an intermediate check with bishop takes f2, but after you calmly move your king, the situation remains the same. Your checkmate threat is still looming. As black struggles to defend their position, you simply capture the knight. Now their bishop on c5 is also hanging. In addition to losing material, black's position begins to collapse as you maintain constant pressure. You can comfortably continue developing your pieces, such as bringing out your bishop or knight, to increase control over the board. Surprisingly, one of the most common moves black chooses here is pawn to c6, likely intending to prepare a future idea. However, it doesn't really change the evaluation of the position. You can confidently continue with bishop to d3, leading into one of my favorite attacking lines in the bishop's opening, where a quick checkmate becomes a serious threat. You then play bishop to g5, forcing the queen to move. After that, bishop to f6 sets up a dangerous mating pattern by preparing queen to g7. Black may try pawn to d5, but this does little to improve their position. You continue with queen to h4, maintaining the checkmate threat. When black tries to defend, you keep attacking aggressively by sacrificing with pawn takes h5. After knight to g5, even though black may be ahead in material with an extra queen, their king is completely exposed and the position is practically hopeless. So far, we have looked at what happens when black captures one of the central pawns. Next, we will examine the more common alternative, and I will also show how to deal with some of the less accurate moves your opponents might play. Let's now consider one of the less optimal replies, knight to c6, where black tries to defend the pawn. Instead of capturing immediately, which would help black activate their knight, you play pawn to d5, gaining space and forcing the knight to move again. If black tries to remain active with knight to d4, then pawn to c3 quickly traps and wins the knight. Now let's take a look at a real game that demonstrates the attacking potential of the bishop's opening. This game was played at the Las Vegas National Open, where a 2,200 rated white faced a 2,100 rated black. The game continues with pawn to c6, preparing to strengthen central control, followed by knight to f3. Black often responds with pawn to d5, a common way to challenge the bishop's opening. White simply retreats the light-squared bishop, while black must still keep an eye on the pawn on e5. Black continues with bishop to b4 check, and later brings the bishop back to d6 to defend the pawn. After knight to c3, white continues developing naturally while keeping pressure on the center. Expecting a simple exchange, black captures the central pawn, assuming white will immediately take back. Instead, white plays knight to g5, targeting the weak f7 square. Once black castles, white finally recaptures on e4, activating several pieces toward the king side. Black tries to stabilize with bishop to e7, hoping to challenge the knight. After a trade, white supports the knight with a pawn, making the position uncomfortable for black. Black then plays queen to a7, likely trying to reinforce the defense. White responds with queen to h5, creating an immediate checkmate threat. Black captures on g5, but this opens the h-file. To defend the king, black plays bishop to f5, while white castles queenside. Black attempts counterplay with pawn to a4. In the actual game, white played pawn to a3 and eventually won, although there was an even stronger idea available. The key move was pawn to g4. Even if black responds with bishop to g6, white has a brilliant queen sacrifice. After the queen sacrifice, black cannot capture with the f-pawn because of a pin. They are forced to recapture with another piece, allowing white to place both rooks on the h-file and deliver checkmate. Black's king becomes completely helpless. This attack works mainly because the pawn on f7 is pinned by white's bishop from a distance. That bishop plays a crucial role. Without it, black could simply escape with pawn to f6. Black trying to kick the bishop, but black remains trapped. White rook to h1 and moves like rook to h8 quickly end the game. In many beginner or intermediate games, black will capture the pawn on d4. Instead of immediately recapturing, it's better to play knight to f3. This develops a piece while still keeping pressure in the center. If black greedily captures the pawn on e4, planning to push pawn to d5 later, you can punish it by playing queen takes d4. Now black has no time to defend with knight to c6 because their knight on e4 is under attack. Usually, the knight retreats to f6 or d6. If knight to d6 is played to attack your bishop, simply castle and keep your position solid. If black then tries knight to c6, it may look like both knights are attacking the bishop and queen. But here comes the key move, rook to a1 check. This move begins a powerful attack. After black defends, white continues with queen takes g7. Since the bishop is no longer on f8, this capture becomes possible. White then attacks the rook, and after it moves, bishop to h6 finishes the attack. At this point, black's position collapses. Even if they capture the bishop that started the bishop's opening, it doesn't help. White simply delivers checkmate. If you enjoyed this guide on the bishop's opening and learned some new traps and attacking ideas, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more chess openings, traps, and strategies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.